what people think of me does matter. It's mattered all my life. I will always care what people think. I just have to make sure I keep it in the right perspective as a leader.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Hello and welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. My name is Tim Rush and we are talking about leadership with Andy Spell, a good friend and a minister for a long time. We are just realizing that Andy has been in ministry for almost 40 years, which is shocking because he is way too young to have been in ministry for that long. Good morning, Andy. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm good. It is actually in Houston, Texas. It's actually not ridiculously hot this morning, so I'm taking that as a plus.
Houston, Texas. That's a different world.
Yes.
Do you ever examine your life choices, Andy? That's what we're here to talk about today.
Absolutely. I love the city. We've got the Astros, so, I mean, what else do you need, right?
See, as I sit here in my St. Louis Cardinal jersey, I wasn't going to throw you under the bus immediately as an Astro fan, but here we go.
Yeah.
Well, Andy Spell is one of my favorite leaders. Andy, I don't know if I've told you about this, but I was super intimidated the first time I met you because of the way people talk about you behind your back. Consummate leader, great man, amazing minister. And I thought, I'm afraid to meet this guy. But it has been such a blessing to get to know you and get to follow you, get to lead alongside you in different corners. So thank you for agreeing to sit down for this conversation.
Man, thank you. Well, same thing, man. I've heard many great things. I'd heard many great things about you and got to meet you, and it's been a pleasure to lead with you on many occasions and to do life with you. So not only lead together, but just someone that I trust and that I know I can talk to. So thank you for being that kind of leader as well, my friend.
Thank you. Listeners, I'm telling you, if you have a road trip, you want to call Andy Spell and say, let me pick you up from the airport and let's get in the car and drive.
It's good. Yes. Those have been some great times, my friend.
Yes, sir. So Andy, we do want to talk specifically about leadership today and your journey in leadership. So just to start, I'm curious, when did you turn around and realize people were actually following you? What was going on? What happened that you noticed, hey, I'm actually a leader?
That's interesting. I think I recognized that a little bit because in elementary and junior high, my mom especially kind of threw me into leadership positions at our church, small church I grew up in Texas, several different cities. I just did things like, we'd do little presentations on Wednesday night at our church, or we'd lead singing, or we'd do different things. And I kind of knew that was expected. When I really realized it was in my high school years. I would lead worship. I was part of the rotation at our church as a 15, 16-year-old kiddo leading worship, and people seemed to love that I did it, and they would follow me and my worship leading and all those kind of things. I also noticed in high school that I was voted most spirited senior, and like when I'd lead cheers from the stands in basketball games because I was not a basketball player, or when I do different things, it seems like people would follow and they noticed that, and I got voted most spirited. I got seen as a leader. And I think at times I noticed it, but then other times I thought, no, I'm not the leader. Everyone else is. Everyone else wants to follow them. They're a better leader than I am. But I think early on, I saw myself as a leader, but I don't know that I learned really how to step into all of that until later years. And then as I became a youth pastor, and did that, I just noticed people would follow. Like I'd set up things, and it was just kind of my job was to make things happen, to build teams, and to have people follow.
Yeah. Totally going off script here, but were you ever surprised when people follow?
Yes. And the bad thing is, Mr. Tim, I'm going to tell you, what I noticed was people would follow me whether I was doing good things, and they would follow when I was not doing good things. Some years in my fraternity in college and high school and in different places especially, I had kind of a wild streak, and people followed the wild streak as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you could go back and witness that, Andy, junior high, high school, college, in church, in school, with fraternity brothers, what is it that you would notice that Andy was doing well at a young age?
I think I was engaging. I think I was connecting. I think I was joyful. I think it felt like it was going to be fun or encouraging or a good time if you were part of whatever I was doing. I think there was a life around. I was just kind of a positive, upbeat person, and I think people enjoyed that.
Yeah. Man, one of the things I'm loving about doing these interviews is I thought to be a leader, you had to be a type A personality. And what I'm learning from conversations with you guys is you show up as yourself.
Yes.
You are an encouraging guy, and where you are, fun happens. And so it sounds like from the very beginning, that part of your personality was taking leadership, and people wanted to be around that, and they wanted to follow that.
And I think that's why, you bring up the type A personality, and I think about the business leader, the CEO, the elder, the principal, the superintendent. You just I go through the list of all these people that I saw. And I think that's one reason I didn't realize I was a leader, because I wasn't the type A person. So I thought, okay, a leader is this. And I would look at all the things that I believed a leader was. None of those things were the things I was on the forefront. Like, I could make things happen. I could organize. I could get a team together. I could have the dates and times and everything like that done. I just had this idea that a leader is this one kind of personality as well. So that's why I think lots of times if people said, "Are you the leader?" I'd be like, "Well, not really. I'm leading, but I'm not the leader," if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. So when you see that, Andy, when you evaluate where you were at that time and how you stood up in front of people, what was it that he needed to grow in? And how in the world did you ever discover?
I think I needed to grow in several areas. One, realizing that it was okay to lead the way that I lead, that leading as a passionate person, that leading as a joyful person, that leading as a person that rallies the troops, that is leadership. But I don't have to be the man who comes up with all the answers. I don't have to be the man who takes a project and can figure out every minute detail. That leadership of encouraging people, rallying people, being an instigator, that kind of leadership is needed, that every organization, every church, every place we are, we need people with gifts that lead in a bunch of different ways so that ultimately success happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So you use the word instigator there. And I wonder if, does that ever feel risky to you, or does that feel like a sweet spot?
I love to instigate things. The other thing is, as a leader, and this is something I have to work on. So yeah, that's a great question. I want things to be wildly successful. And part of that is probably ego. I'll admit that. And so as an instigator, whenever I think we need to do something and I get people excited about doing that, and if only a few people show up or a few people do it, I can have this tendency to think, man, that wasn't very good. And realizing that for those few that came or for whatever it was, one, it was a project worth doing. And for those that came, it was exactly what they needed. I love being an instigator, but then at times I just feel like always being out front and always pulling people along can make me feel tired at times and feel like, I'm out here on my own. This feels kind of exposed.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do to take care of yourself? And this may draw into the comment about ego, but when you feel like you're out in front or you feel exposed or something doesn't feel as successful as you expected it to be, like how do you take care of yourself to ensure you're still on the right track?
Yeah. One, having trusted advisors, trusted friends that I can talk to, or I can say, man, I feel like I'm doing this all on my own. And they'll remind me, you're not. Here we are. We're here with you. And I'm like, you're right. Okay. So one, trusted advisors. Two, that success is not always predicated on how many were there, but it can be, was someone touched by this? Did somebody get to serve with this? Did somebody gain from this? Was this beneficial for one? And sometimes if I remember that if it's beneficial for the one, or even if it's beneficial for me, then it's worth doing and it's worth the time. And then just taking time to rest, to make sure that I'm taking care of my soul with the things that I need, so that as a leader, I go in with my cup full and not needing others to fill that cup. I realize I've got to rely on me, my friends, my God to help me with that. And that's where my strength comes from. It doesn't necessarily have to come from others.
Yeah. So when you say not needing others to fill that cup, have you ever found yourself in a position where you're upside down, where you realize, that is what I was counting on. That's what I was looking for?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's when I have to do that work and say, one, was this initiative, did it come from a good place? Absolutely. And did it need to happen? Yes. And then when I'm upside down, I realize that I don't need to rely on other people to validate who I am. And whenever I do that, it's work, of course, man. Tim, it's work. It's hard work. I have to go inside and realize that I was doing that I need to go inside and realize where my validation comes from. It's taking care of that part of me that feels like that I need others for validation. And I have to take care of that inner part of me by bringing that validation to myself, which probably sounds goofy to some people, but for me, it works. I bring the validation to myself so that I know through God and who he's made me to be, that's the only validation I need. One of the things, and you may have another question, but I'm going to say this. For a long time, I really, so the way I was brought up, and my mom's an awesome person, and my dad is too, but especially with my mom when it came around church things, because she's the one who took us to church. She put on my mind that every time I did something, and I think she was just trying to encourage me and build me, but every time I did something, everybody else at church or everybody else, like when I was in musicals or plays or whatever, would tell me what a great job I did. And my mom would say, you did good, but this is what you need to do to be perfect. This is what could have made it better. But the word perfect, I was always striving for perfect. And Tim, I was never going to get to perfect. I realized that. When you're leading worship, I'm not going to hit every note perfectly. If I'm preaching at church, I'm not going to make every point perfectly. If I'm leading a group, if I'm leading on a weekend, a Crucible weekend, if I'm leading a thing that we're doing here at church that I'm in charge of, an initiative here, it's not going to be perfect. And so for a long time, I think what I needed was validation for people to make me feel like it was perfect. I need your validation to make me feel like it was worthwhile. Please tell me I did a good job. Please tell me I did a good job. And I'd never say that, but I'd ask, hey, how did that go? Well, what did you really think? And my wife one time was like, I said it was good. It was good. So I had to take that. And so at some point about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized But if I preached a sermon, or if I led worship for our worship guy when he's out of town, or if I led an initiative, or if I led on a weekend, or anywhere that I led, if I believed it was good, it didn't have to be great. It didn't have to be perfect. But if I believed that I said what I wanted to say, or that the Spirit moved in worship, or that the weekend ended the way that it should, or if the initiative, the outcome was what we wanted, then good is good. If it was great, awesome. But you know what? Good is okay. And so I came to just within my soul live on this level that says good is okay, and be happy with good, and be at peace with good.
You've mentioned the fact that your ego can come into the picture, and you've mentioned that you've noticed a want for people to tell you you're doing well, and that you've worked through that. And as you're saying it, I think, man, those are things I don't want to admit to myself. I don't want to admit that my ego is ever a part of the equation. I don't want to admit that I want people's acclaim. So tell me about the hard work of uncovering that, and the hard work of coming to the point where you can own that, yeah, that is a piece of who I am.
Wow, that's really good. I mentioned my wife briefly. There was a time in my life, as a youth minister, she'd go up and be in my classes every week. And she did that almost the whole time that I was youth minister, anywhere we were. And I can't remember how many years I'd been in youth ministry, but we had 2 kids at home. She was working. We had 2 kids at home. She's a housewife. And we were finished with one Sunday, and we were on our way home from church. And I was like, "How was class today?" And she goes, "It was good." And I said, "It was just good?" And she goes, "Yeah, it was good." So was it great? And she goes, "It was great. It was fine. It was a class." And finally, and I said, "Well, was it good or was it great?" I just was hammered because I needed to hear that it was great. I don't know what was going on inside of me. I think I wasn't feeling particularly gifted that day. Who knows? I don't remember that part of it. But she just looked at me and she said, "You know what? No affirmation I give you is ever going to be enough, because I don't believe that you believe that you've got enough." Mm. And I was like, holy cow. She goes, "I cannot be your cheerleader and a mom and a wife and somebody who works too. So you're going to have to figure this out." And that's when it started me on a journey that took years of realizing that probably ultimately I wasn't sure that I was enough, and that I was good enough, or that I had what it takes, or that I was really good. And so the work I had to do, Tim, was coming to the realization that God loves me. He delights in me. God made me exactly who I am. He didn't make me to be a type A personality. He didn't make me to be a CEO, but he made me to be Andy. And I had to believe that that was enough, that it was good enough, and that what I bring to the table is worthwhile, whether others see it or not. Now, bro, a good compliment, holy cow, yeah, I love it. I still, or somebody tell me that I did well, of course. I'm not going to shy away from that. But it allows me to take criticism, and it allows me to take affirmations and look at them and believe that both are needed for me to be a complete man. But it's still work. At 61 and doing this for years, I still have to work on that. Not too long ago, I led a worship, and I had a few, our worship leader was out of town, so I'm in charge, and I led a worship, and I had 3 or 4 people come up, and it just hit that day. It clicked. And somebody, they said, "Man, that's the best worship I've had in a while. Thank you for those songs. It just worked for me. Thank you so much." And I was like, "It's so good." I'm leaving again on November 3rd, and I'm like, holy crap, am I going to be able to live up to that again? And I've got all this pressure on me, and I'm like, I don't have to live up to that. That gets to stand alone, and the 3rd of November gets to stand alone. And the level of whether it was good or not is on whether people loved it or not, but on whether I believe the Spirit led me and God led me, and the people got what they needed on that day.
Yeah, so growing up like you, a little boy, growing up in the church, and you're just told pride is bad. And so the response is, well, then I'm not prideful. And it's bad, so it can't be me. And that journey of discovering, oh man, I am prideful, counterintuitively, that is the most healthy thing.
Yeah.
To be able to hold that in front and go, man, this is what my pride wants right now. And is there a way that I can offer that to myself and not try to draw it out of my wife, try not to draw it out of my congregants or my elders? There are healthier ways of taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think pride that leads to sin is one thing, but I think we can walk away, Tim, and honestly say, man, I'm proud of what I just did. I'm proud of the work I did. I'm proud of the way this turned out. I'm proud of my kids. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think it's actually healthy, because if we believe that God created us, I don't think Jesus, if God created us and who we are and he's gifted us, I think we're honoring God when we step into that and we glory in those things. I can't imagine Jesus walking away and going from preaching, the Beatitudes going, yeah, I'd give that a 6 out of 10. I just was he connected with the Spirit or not? And if he was connected with the Spirit, I can't imagine him going, hey guys, hey, what'd you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Did people, I don't know. I think he lived in the fullness of who God created him to be. He's the Son of God, but he was also a man. And I think, I don't know, I just think he lived in the fullness. And I want to live in the fullness of who God created me to be, knowing that I'm human, knowing that I have ego, knowing that I have pride, knowing that I have insecurities, knowing that what people think of me does matter. It's mattered all my life. I will always care what people think. I just have to make sure I keep it in the right perspective as a leader. Because if I don't, Tim, if I don't keep my insecurities or the messages that I say when they come on saying I'm not enough, I have to fight those. Because if I don't, then that turns me into a leader that's unhealthy. And I want to be a healthy leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we would have started this conversation, hey, Andy, how do you believe you are made in the image of God? Like particularly Andy Spell.
Yeah.
I think we would land on a lot of these attributes that make you a good leader. Like, does God inspire joy? Does God move people forward? Does God instigate? So it would make sense that how you show up in the image of God that he created you to be, that would feel really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And on the other side of that, the accuser, also known in the Bible as Satan, would have accusations, those fiery arrows that would say, hey, Andy, that wasn't very good.
Right. Or
question yourself.
And that's really not a leader. And, that's really not a leader. A leader is, strong and he's tight-fisted and, he orders people around. And, it's just funny being able to look at myself and say, you know what, I'm not that. I'm really not. But what's crazy is there's times when I can be pretty forthright and directed and all those things too. Those things can come online, and I think they're needed at times.
Yeah.
Being decisive. This is what we're going to do. I know you think we needed to do this. Man, I'm the leader. This is what we're going to do. And not in a jerky kind of way, but I think sometimes decisiveness and control is needed for that situation. And I've learned that that's okay too.
So let me ask you, as you were saying that, I realized that one of my, I don't know if I would call this a blind spot or a dark place, but for myself, a good leader in my mind is somebody that they always know the answers.
Yes.
And so a bad place I can go is if I'm questioned in public about something. And when I'm confident in how God has created me, I can say, man, that's a good question. What do you think about that? But when I'm not owning my own pride, I've got to show, I tell myself, you got to have the answer. You better say something, and you better say something good. And nothing good comes of that.
Right.
So I wonder for yourself, do you have a spot like that you're like, okay, if I'm not taking care of myself, this may be how I react?
Yeah. So what I have found is I love having the answer. I want the answer and I want it to come quickly. But I've also learned that it takes me a while to get there, Tim. Like I need a second to formulate the answer. And sometimes in my mind, I'm afraid what I will do is if I'm not in a healthy spot, I will come to think that me taking a second looks like I'm ignorant, I'm a dummy, and I don't like that. And so that's when I will find that I get tripped up because I want to have the answer and I don't want to look like a dummy or like I don't know. Yeah. So that will trip me up. Was that an answer to your question?
Yeah. So when you're in a healthy space, what do you do instead?
I will say, hey, can you give me a second? Let me think about that. Okay. So what are you asking? Man, blah to blah. You know what? I really don't know the answer to that. Hey, and if you and I were in a circle, hey, Tim, gosh, I'm stuck here. What would your answer be to that? And that's okay. And then it might be, bro, thank you. Yeah, awesome. That's great. Or, whatever. Yeah, giving myself a second to formulate the answer. Because if I don't give myself a second and I feel like I've got to have the answer, then I start stumbling and bumbling. And then what comes out just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
Or it's just a really bad decision or a really bad answer.
Yeah. So how would you encourage a younger leader to take care of themselves so that they can be in a good place when they're challenged?
Number one, soul work. Do soul work. Find out what motivates you, why you're motivated by those things, who you are as a person, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. Learn who you are and become at peace with who you are and how you lead. Learn how to not judge yourself and measure yourself against others. Truly believe if you're who God's made you to be and that is your gifting, to live in that and to be happy with that and to become happy with who you are. Learn to love the man or woman that you see in the mirror because God loves you and God delights in you and God is for you. And so be for yourself. Learn to love those things. For me, what helps me, Tim, 100%, as I laugh at those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world? I've learned to not take myself so seriously and to really give myself a break and let myself off the mat. Yeah. I would say that. And then also, man, there are a ton of, what are they called? See, right here, I don't have the answer, Tim, so I'm going to rely on you because you're the smart one. You've got these tests or things that you can take that talk about what your strengths and weaknesses are, where you're strong. Evaluations, what are they called? Think of the name.
That sounds like a good word to me.
Yeah, so it's like, so one of the ones I took here lately is a thing called the Working Genius. And the Working Genius is a thing that we did as a staff here. And what are those things that you're really good in? And those are the things that give you life. And what I've found is that I'm strong in galvanizing. So that's the word they use, of getting people together and getting people motivated to be around in projects and ideas and initiatives. I love galvanizing people and getting energy going in that direction. That's just something I took this test, when I took this assessment. That's the word I wanted. When I took this assessment,
yes,
it told me that I'm good at that. So, and I look at that, I'm like, that's true. And then enabling. I like to help people grow in and be enabled in the things that they're good at. So those are the things that I do really well. So I know that. You know what I'm low on? Tenacity. I'm not good about saying something from the beginning to the end. I hate it. After a while, I get tired. I get bored. So I need to surround myself with people that have tenacity to make sure that it gets done. I can do that, but if I have to spend all my time doing that kind of thing, I get tired. I'm not an inventor. I don't like invention. I don't want to sit around and try to figure out something for hours. So I surround myself with people that they're strong at that. Those are things I try to, and that's what I would tell a young person, young man, young woman, learn what you do well. And if you can, surround yourself with those who have other strengths that can build and make a team a really great team. And don't try to do it on your own.
Yeah, so there's that famous proverb, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And listening to what you unpack there, I think, man, I wish I could go back 30 years.
Yeah.
And have that conversation with myself. I can't do that. So today I can be reminded God created me, and he created my set of gifts and lined that up with a purpose, and I can be confident in that.
And I think what's good, Tim, if we can do this, and I would say this to anybody that's young and starting out in leadership, I do the same. I look back and think, oh my gosh, good gravy. 23, 24-year-old me in Evergreen, Colorado, starting out in youth ministry. I'm like, I didn't even know what I was doing, really and truly. I didn't know what being a good leader was. I wasn't aware of a lot of parts of my life. I didn't realize I needed to do soul work. I mean, I had a job and I was going to do it. And then I moved to Grapevine, Texas, and I look back and I think, oh my gosh, what would I do differently? But the beauty of this and having relationships through the years is there are people that will tell me, dude, man, you are awesome. Man, I loved being in your youth ministry. I loved being at your church. People, from Grapevine will say, man, we just loved when you were at our church and so, Midland. I've been in this long enough that I see my weaknesses and I see all these things that I could have done better. But I've got people in my life that say, man, I loved that you were here. I loved that you were our leader. I loved that you did this. And I think they gave grace and they saw the strengths, maybe even when, Tim, I wasn't aware of those strengths. The other thing I would say to this, and somebody gave this to me, when I started out, and maybe it's different now, maybe it's changed. The idea was that we had our strengths and our weaknesses, and we needed to work on our weaknesses to make them strengths. And somewhere that changed along the line, and I kept on working on my weaknesses. And I had a mentor finally say, dude, why are you doing that? Work on your strengths. Make your strengths. I mean, yes, don't let your weaknesses become a liability, but live in your strengths and love your strengths and be who God's created you to be. And that really helped me because I think I'd spent a lot of time going, man, I really suck at this, and how do I do that better? Instead of living into those things that I did well. So I would tell a young man or woman that as well. That's what I'd tell them.
Man, I can almost remember, I remember the first person to say that to me and almost looking around the room like, is that okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Are we sure that's all right? So I think it would be awesome if we could get that message out. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful message.
The other thing that I just live into, and this is the type of leader that I want to be, and I say this a lot, and I think it has helped me. Not every leader is going to be this way, but if there's someone out there that wants this encouragement, this is what I live by. Tim, I'm never going to ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do. So, like at our church here, if we've got to fold tables and put up chairs, I'm going to fold tables and put up chairs. Or, if I tell people, man, you really need to be there for somebody, then when somebody's calling me at 11 o'clock at night, I answer the phone if I hear it. The problem is I'm old enough now that I'm asleep and I won't always hear it. And I've got my do not disturb on for a reason. I'm not the type of leader that says, here's what we need to do, now you go do it. I'm the type of leader, and I think there's some out there, and I just want to encourage you, if you're this kind of leader, I'm the kind of leader that says, hey, this is what we need to do, and we're going to go do this together. And that's okay. And I think that kind of leader has a place in this world as well.
Yeah, man, Andy, I love that. And all of this, yes, you are that leader, and it does just what you're saying. It motivates people. That word galvanized, like I think you take people as they are, and when you bring them together, they're stronger. There's that synergistic feel to they have been galvanized. So yeah, that just seems to be true about you.
Thank you.
Well, we need to close this down. Any last words to our audience?
Yeah, I had one more thought, and it came and it went. So that's part of my dog brain, squirrel brain, whatever that is. In leadership, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not do things well, and it's okay to learn from those things. Do not let a failure or not doing things well tell you that you are not the leader, that you cannot be a leader. Dust off, maybe get some support if you need it, but stand back up and lead again. Because I've learned from seeing things that have not gone very well, and it made me a better leader by learning from those experiences. And it made me think, man, I'm never going to do that again. And that's a great motivator.
And I was just talking with somebody this morning about, is it called fundamental attribution error? I feel like those words are in there where you attribute to other people things that go to their character. They're late because of their character. I'm late because of traffic. It seems like it works reverse in leadership. When other leaders have issues with what they were doing, I don't think they're bad leaders because I already think they're great leaders. But if I do it, yeah, it's because I shouldn't be leading. So thank you for that. That is such a good encouragement.
You bet, man.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Spell is just a wonderful leader. I can't wait to listen to this recording again and take some notes. Thank you, Andy, for being with us today.
Hey, thank you. And man, I say a lot of words. So people, sorry, there's a lot of words.
Yeah, so we can listen to it multiple times.
There we go. Thank you, bud.
Yeah. Love you, man.
Love you.
Bye.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.